Om. Om. Om.
Okay.
Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Mavid Vishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Okay, who wants to start?
ॐ पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रहीतां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वाम् अनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणीम्।
Chandra, your...
Yeah. Namostu te vyasa vishala buddhe पुल्लाररविन्दाय पत्र नेत्र येन स्वया भारतैलपूर्णा प्रज्वालितो ज्ञानमय प्रदीप प्रपन्नपारिजाताय स्तोत्रवेत्रैकपाणये ज्ञानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृततुहे नमः।
वसुदेवसुदं देवं कंसचारूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुम्।
Madhuri, you want to
Yeah.
finish it?
सर्वधर्मा परित्यज्य मामेकं शरणं व्रज अहत्वां सर्वपापेभ्यः मोक्षयिष्यामि मा शुचः।
Very good. So we finished with the shloka number 8 last time, which covered all the values of, Amanitvam, Adambitvam, Ahimsa, Kshanti, Ajavam, Acharyopasanam, Shaucham, Stairyam, Atma Vinigraha. So the last two that we covered last week was about having a firmness in anything we do, which is what Stairyam is all about. And Atma Vinigraha is having a mastery over a mind. So that being said, today we'll be covering, what are the things that takes our mind out of control, you know it's a very good progression in how it is going, in terms of the values. So we did the 5 values and then we did those 4, so that completes the 9 values from shloka number 8. And we talked about that it is all attitudinal changes. And just to remind us, these are the 20 values that we are doing. And as I mentioned even last time, as we go through these values, it becomes more and more in depth. And also, very subtle values are coming up pretty soon, after, I would say, almost after the 13th value, or 14th, I would say. Okay, so that being said, I just found something very interesting about Arjavam, the application of Arjavam, you know. Um, I thought I'll just share with you because this week I was doing some readings. And Arjavam basically is all about really being authentic, you know. Of course, Arjun refers to straightforwardness It's an absence of crookedness in how we deal with things. But in today's language, especially when we are thinking about, working with our kids and everything, and when we are talking about these values, I felt this word of authentic, really came to my mind about how, being authentic, being aligned in, we talked about this vak, manas, being in our word, being the way we speak, the way we think, and the way we act. That is what Arjavam. But Arjavam is basically is something which is being authentic, and authentic essentially thrives when we have an inner alignment. And this inner alignment has to completely outweigh an external validation. What do we mean by external validation? Today, many times, we do a lot of things only to gain approval from others, and that is the external validation. But how can we make our own inner alignment, um, outweigh that? So, in today's world, again, it's becoming more and more so, like we have talked about, it's so psychological. Psychologically, we feel that relying on constant motivation outside is how I can live my life. But this basically uh, signals a kind of a misalignment between what my true values are and what how I'm supposed to portray myself, right? So, from a sociology point of view, also, societies, they reward all these external validation. So, we get a lot of external credit or validation points. Um, for example, if I'm really productive and I speak in a certain manner in which I'm making an impact, everything is about outcomes and impact, you know. So that is how we are really thriving ourselves. So by doing so, what happens is a lot of things within ourselves also we not only get misaligned, but we also postpone decisions. And so prioritizing this ease or performance really brings about so much of this discontent and misalignment, and it drains so much of energy. So a couple of incidents that happened this week, I was thinking more and more about this alignment and arjavam. So there were a few things that I came across which I thought I'll throw your way in this area of arjavam. And you know, it's more or less like quotes, which is make yourself a life where you don't have to constantly hype ourselves up just to get through the day. So if everything requires a lot of motivation to do that, then there is some kind of a misalignment. And this misalignment shows up in many ways in stress and impact on relationships, you know. And this is where we are not honest about ourselves. And many times we get tired about pretending that things don't bother us or something, but in reality, it does bother, but we tend to suppress it, you know. So, and so therefore, what do? We have to kind of make ourselves continuously keep paying attention to what is it that is getting misaligned and what is it that I'm always trying to postpone. But these are all effects of this misalignment. So this is what I took. What I did was I took some quotes out of something what I was reading for a Gen Z, and but then I found so much of connection to Arjavam. So it's not as if these values are archaic, but they are extremely very much needed for today. I was reading some article also about how does a Gen Z view the world, compared to how we view the world. I mean, we are more like millennials, right? So there is actually no difference in that. There is no difference in the kind of values we need to practice today versus during the Bhagavad Gita time, I guess, when it was published by Krishna, to Arjuna. So another quote which I came across, which is again connected to Arjuna: make yourself less interested in being impressive and more interested in being at ease. So being at ease is being true to my own swarupa, you know, and applause fades quickly, but discomfort has a long memory. All this as an outcome of not being in Arjava, you know. So I don't know, hope this helps to really connect to what is going on today, right? So anyway, that was about Arjun, which I thought I would share. We did Acharya Upasanam, then we did Shaucham, and then Shaucham, of course, we said is what is it that misaligns us, takes us away from Arjavam, is basically all these misvalues we have in our mind, which is, you know, being away from developing this purity of thought, because things like jealousy or envy or anger and all these things come as impediments preventing me from being aligned, you know. So therefore shaucham is necessary not just for external, but it is also about having that alignment of thought. So then how do I become clean? We talked about last time, as you know, of course, satsanga, having all the saintly values. That is the one only way I can actually, um, practice this. Then we talked about stadium is firmness or being steadfast in taking up whatever comes my way. So again, this, when I look at stadium, I think about multitasking, you know. Why does multitasking happen? Because I'm not firmly committed to one particular thing and finishing it. Instead, I'm allowing my energy to be dissipated in multiple ways. And that leads to, again, again, this is that misalignment, what we talked about. Because I have misalignment, I tend to focus on many things, and then stadium is gone. So stadium is actually the strength to remain firm in what I'm doing, and not just in the action, but also in one's convictions. So being that, and of course, stadium can be improved a lot, even if I take one thing, like for example, meditation, or I take anything and I firmly commit myself to do it. So stadium is one way to improve our discipline. So we did that. Then we talked about Atman Nigraha, which is the mastery of the mind. And we said that there are three types of thinking last time. Most of us are in an autopilot mode, which is that mechanical mode of thinking. And impulsive thinking happens because, again, due to lack of alignment, um, uh, because of not aligned, and because of not practicing the shaucham, which is the values thing, my mind becomes impulsive in the face of a threat, you know. So the idea is we want to start to practice deliberate thinking, and that is how we put that into action and have a control of our mind, to ultimately reaching a point of effortless thinking. So we want to get our mind to a state of effortless thinking, but this again is such a difficult thing, of course, because we have all these obstructions in our mind. And the obstructions, of course, so far we talked about obstructions like, the negative values. But pretty soon we're going to be discussing today about what is an ego and everything. So, what is ego? What are desires? All these are again obstructions. But once I recognize that these are my obstructions and I'm working on it, I can get to a point of effortless thinking. Once I get to an effortless thinking mode, I'm getting more and more closer to my true nature, which is that Atman. Okay. So, Atma Vinigra, we need thinking mastery. So, really, we need to train this mind. We are not spending any time at all on this, right? We, because again, it's not tangible. Um, Losing weight is tangible. I can do that. But am I really developing a mastery of mind? That can be happen, of course, through journaling or, really having that reflection at the end of the day. Was I able to master this three modes, impulsive, autopilot mode? Was I an autopilot most of the time? How did I handle my situations? That thing. So relative mastery is that aspect of being alert and deliberate. So it's not submitting to all my impulses. I'm sure all of us face situations where things are being hit. We don't even realize it. And by being in an autopilot mode, we're trying to address this, But it is that idea of breaking that habit, breaking that habit of getting into that autopilot mechanical behavior. So that is what relative mastery is about. So one is being very alert all the time. And the second part is trying to not catch something before it becomes an issue. So that's what developing alertness. And then we went through all these questions last time. So now we're entering into shloka number 9. So just wanted to round that up. So shloka number 9. Indriyartheshu vairagyam. Indriyartheshu vairagyam. Anahankara evacha. Anahankara evacha. Janma mrityu jara vyadhi. No, the whole thing I have to say it together, I remember. Janma mrityu jara vyadhi dukkha doshanu darshanam. Janma mrityu jara vyadhi dukkha doshanu darshanam. So, Indriyarteshu vairagyam, which is where we're going to talk about this other obstruction, which is our desires. So, indifference towards the objects is indriyartheshu. Vairagyam, which is the dispassion or indifference. Then anahankaraha, which is absence of the sense of ego. Anahankara. Then Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi Dukkha. So all these are the modifications that we go through, which the physical body goes through, which is the birth, death, old age, sickness, and sorrow. So how can I live in this world, or how can I act in this world where I'm able to go beyond this modifications and not allow these modifications to bother me? Because if I recognize I'm not that body, but it is only the body that is going through it, how can I, circumvent that thing? So let's start with Indriyartheshu Vairagyam. So Indriya, it means the sense organs. Okay. And Artha in this case means, it stands for the object, Indriyartheshu. Then Vairagyam basically means dispassion, and it comes from the word raga. So you see the word Vairaga. So raga means having a desire, and when it is joined with this negative prefix, which is V, so thus Indriyartheshu Vairagyam, it means having a dispassion towards the objects of the sense organs. Okay, so raga means desire for objects, or it means having an absence of, again using Gen Z language or whatever, is an addiction, addiction for worldly pleasures and possessions. So this word raga, which means desire, is actually more than just, as I said, just a small desire. Once in a while I want to have an ice cream and I walk to Baskin Robbins or something, right? So it's more than just that. It's actually a craving for something. And this is something that we are watching out for ourselves. It can be for anything, and typically we just use it for objects. It can be even a craving for a phone call, phone call from our loved ones. Suppose, we've been in that mode of expecting a phone call all the time. That becomes a kind of an addiction. So, even that much. So, that is what we are calling this as vairagya, indriyarteshu vairagyam. So, let us see how this acts for us from our, ourself, from an individual. So we talked about that, it's a dispassion towards sense. Obviously, dispassion towards sense objects happens because of our sense organs, right? So Indriyarteshu Vairagyam is basically um, mastering the control on our sense organs. And these sense organs, for us, if you look at it, there are the Jnanendriyas and Karmendriyas, correct? Jnanendriyas are the ones which are bringing the input from the outside to us. They are the gateways, right? Gateways through which things enter into us. And Karmendriyas are the ones by which we act. So we have both of them, Karmendriyas and Jnanendriyas. And they are meant, actually, if we think about it, is um, we have come with already a set of desires from our previous lives. And of course, in what is that? One of the Kathopanishad. In Kathopanishad, almost in the second or third Valli, this beautiful shlokas which talks about how what is really the role of the sense organs. But the role of the sense organs is to recognize that I have a desire from the past lives, not to increase my desires. It's not about getting new desires in, but it's supposed to kind of exhaust our older desires. So these are I just put some Sanskrit words here. We have the Shrotra, Twak, Chakshu, Rasana, and Grana. So the five sense organs through which we experience different things, and Vak, Pani, Pada, Payu, and Upastha. Through the five Karmendriyas, this is being, exhausted. So we have the Jnanendriyas which bring in through these sensations into our mind. And from the mind, of course, you have all this mechanism of where the intellect now has to make a decision, and then it gets stored in the memory, and then over a period of time, that becomes my ahankara. What is my ego ultimately? My ego, or this identity of who I am, is governed by the amount of input which then becomes stored as the vasanas, and then it is the vasanas which then gets transformed into a thought, and the thought becomes a desire, and then we act out in the world, right? So this is how the cycle of life for us happens today. And all this is where we talked about this um, Indriyarteshu Vairagyam. So, how do I act in the world where I can avoid being a slave to the sense organs? You know, and we have seen this in Tattva Bodh, Dhamma. Dhamma is one of those values. So Dhamma is directly connected to Indriyarteshu Vairagyam, where I'm not allowing my external things to come into my mind. And in Sankhya Yoga or Patanjali Yoga, so there's one thing called Pratyahara. So again, connecting it to the previous shloka of Atma Vinigraha, which is the requiring this, the sense of, we talked about relative mastery of having constant alertness and deliberate thinking. So this is required in order for us to practice this indriyarteshu vairagyam. How can I really have a dispassion? It can happen only if I'm constantly alert and I am having that control, right? So that is what is indriya nigraha. So now that we know what this control of sense organs are, let us talk about what is then an addiction. How do we develop an addiction? Where does it start? Any thoughts on where does addiction really thoughts? I mean, we can even give some practical example with just a simple, I know you're ready to go to bed, but I grabbed my coffee this morning. So I'm addicted to coffee. I'm, I can say that. Um, so yeah, go ahead, Suvarna. You wanted to talk about addiction? How does it start?
Me too. Coffee has to be there for me too.
Right, right. Yeah.
They won't start
So
without
that
it.
is definitely something, I mean, just like how we talked about Arjavam, where Arjavam is, we can tie it to simple things like being punctual, you know. When I'm not punctual, that is anarjavam. And here, when I'm addicted to a simple thing like coffee, for example, that's an addiction. Um, so where does it start and how do we develop this, right? I mean, now today, one thing which I really appreciate very much is, you know, talking to our younger Balavihar kids who are now having their own kids. One thing they've stopped doing is giving absolutely no exposure to sugar or perhaps even sometimes salt, right? I was talking to Meenu, when I came there, and she was telling about how Karthik, kid, from the time he was born, absolutely no sugar, Whereas in our generation, we believed in giving the child chocolates after chocolates and candies and payasams and everything. And even today, when I see our menu in India, nothing has changed. How many sweets, and you got to have not just one or two or three in marriages, 5 or 10 kinds of sweets in just one meal. So addiction is really where it's this Indriyarteshu Vairagyam hits so much. Um, so anyway, any thoughts on this?
Hariom, I think yes. For example, like we talked about coffee, if we need that coffee, that jolt of caffeine in the
Mm-hmm.
morning. But if we, for reasons, for we don't get that coffee in the morning, are you going to get all? Is your day not going to go well? That is where we have to figure out
I know
if
we
that.
try to justify it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we can, if the day goes on, but you still did not have your coffee, but the day went on, you did what you need to do, you were okay. How many days can you go like that? Maybe not too many, but in small steps, if we can, be aware of it, I think that is the first step, right? That we have this tendency towards getting habituated to something. We
Yeah.
are very, if we are aware of it, I think that
Yeah.
is where our first step towards addiction is awareness that we are addicted, kind of.
Yeah. So I will actually tie this word addiction to what you just mentioned, which is habit. Okay. Habit formation, where in recent times, I think there's quite a few books that have been written about it. Um, is where this whole thing is going. We tend to become habituated to certain ways of living. In the case of coffee, it is not too bad in the sense, like you said, if I want my entire day to go well, this small thing, yes, I understand it's an addiction, but it is helping me do other things. So it is not bad. But addiction can be in, like I said, it doesn't have to be towards just food. Um, it can be an addiction towards anything where I've allowed a certain habit to form for myself, so much so that I'm not able to get out of it. You know, that's the point that we really have to think about. Again, when I'm connecting these 20 values to how we are leading our life, and if this has to be relevant for future generations, which is what Suresh always points out, whenever we're looking at some of these things, are we really addressing it in the right manner? Each one of these values, the more and more I read it, and as that's why I was bringing that Arjavam also before, I find how relevant this is even to today's world. In fact, more so, much more so. Again, this addiction part of it, I get addicted to social media. I have to put on my thing, I have to see, you know,
How many likes?
how many likes and who is being talked about. Mind is gets getting so much more and more scattered. And each one of these values are hitting each one of those aspects, to whatever extent it was of value a long time ago, it is a much, much more value today. And this Indriyarteshu Vairagyam, which is, um, of course, we are talking about only seeing something and getting affected by it. But that is why I put all the five sense organs here. You know, in all these areas, addiction is happening and we have to stop it. Yeah.
Hariom.
Yes, Anand?
Yeah. Is Vishayavasana considered as addiction in the Ajatmika, in the sense?
Vishayas?
Vishayavasana.
Vishayavasana is, yes, the Vishayavasana is what we are
Yeah.
addressing here.
Okay. Thanks.
And in this context, I wanted to put this beautiful,
Vivek
I mean, it
Chudamani.
really hits you hard. Yeah, go ahead.
No,
Something
sorry. I did not know. I was.
Yeah. This shloka from Viveka Chudamani. Shabdadibi panchabhireva pancha panchatmapuhu swagunena baddha kuranga matanga patanga meena bringa naraha panchabhiranchita kim. You know, um, there is, I know there's a certain meter to say the shloka, and when you say it in that meter, I will try to remember how it is said. And because that meter really hits you hard, it's basically saying, you know, the deer, the elephant, the moth, the fish, and the black bee, okay, they all die because of addiction to one of the sense organs. I mean, or whether it is smelling or hearing or, all this. Um, but we as human beings, where we have five of them, you know, we are even more hit by that. So, for the deer, the sound through sound, it is captivated by the hunter's music and it gets killed. The elephant, by the touch, lured by the touch of a female, it falls into a pit. So this is how hunters actually catch these animals. And whereas a moth, we know that, right? Moth, when after some rainfall or whatever, you have so many of these moths and you turn on the light and everything gets attracted by the light and it dies right away. So attracted by the light of a fire, it burns to death. Fish, it's attracted by the taste of the food at the end of the bait. It is hooked. Bumblebee by the smell. So each one of these sense. But for us, we are killed in all the five sense organs, all the ways, because we are blessed with this five sense organs. Bhagwan has given us more of these sense organs, thinking that, you know what, you guys have reached the peak. You have so many vasanas now. but you have the ability to get this one. Let me give you not just one or two, I'll give you all five. And enjoy the world, but let not the world enjoy you, right? But we are allowing our world to enjoy. I mean, nowadays, when I see in India also, and especially when I went to Bangalore last year, in the beginning of last year, the number of kids who, a number of, when I say kids, teenagers, drinking, staying late, pubs, staying out, all these values, there is actually no values at all now at that age level. um, one has to drink, one have to have non-veg, one has to, this is becoming a norm now, um, all that is hitting this indriyarteshu vairagyam, you know. So let us talk about what this vairagyam really means. Is it really, does that mean that I'm not supposed to eat anything, I'm not supposed to drink, you know? Um, should I put some kind of a barrier between me and my sense organs? Should I go to the mall? Should I turn my head away from the Apple store, when I want to buy my next thing? So is that what this value, is that what they're saying, right? So basically, it is not a suppression. That is the most important thing we have to remember from this. It is not a state of any kind of inner suppression. It is basically through understanding, you know. And I think that's where this Viveka Chudamani example is, Shloka is really saying how even with one sense organ, if it can kill you, then it is really not really a suppression of any desire. It is actually being very objective about what I'm saying, what I'm seeing, what I'm saying, and everything. So it is really understanding, for example, let's take even this example of coffee, right? Uh, with coffee, yes, I mean, it's not just the coffee alone. So black coffee, they say, is okay, or black tea is okay. But it is that kick of the sugar, or maybe the kick of the milk powder or something, which may not be good for us in the long run, right? So if I'm very objective about this, same thing with diabetes and sugar and all that, if I know that sugar is going to kill me, but that is only at one level, okay? That is at one level where it affects your health immediately. But at the next level is to think about that happiness equation and everything, how much of this is really giving me pleasure and how much is it hurting me? Is more amount of it, am I really getting the pleasure out of it? So these are the kind of questions we want to ask. So that is the only way that I can really is to spend that little bit of reflection time by really seeing the objects for what they are. Um, at the end of the day, can I actually even practice this giving up coffee, but with an understanding? Many times we say, okay, I'm going to give up coffee for a whole month. But have I spent some time thinking through it? So we literally have to go through one day of an exercise. Okay, why am I having coffee? This is just an exercise. I agree with you, Suvarna, when you said, for the sake of having a better day, if I'm taking just one coffee, is that bad? But this is more of a reflection of it, right? Reflection on if I give up coffee, how am I going to give up coffee? Can I do it little by little? I know that I have to work with my mind. My mind is like a child. It is craving for it. I cannot completely, give up. And then I also need to sort of think, there needs to be that understanding of why am I doing this? At a very high level. This is at a high level in the sense I am already the happiness. Why am I going for this temporary happiness? So today I'm not convinced that I am that Satchit Ananda. So I'm looking for something to complete my thing. So I'm looking at myself as somebody who is incomplete, unfulfilled, inadequate, insecure, all this. So I'm trying to bring that completeness to myself by the pursuit of all these things which are making me happy, And I'm thinking that if I get this happiness from all this, then I will be happy. So I'm not able to fathom at that point that this mind, whom I'm trying to make it happy, is actually getting habituated to more and more of the same thing, right? So this is where this thing of artha and kama comes into play. What is artha and what is kama? Kama is standing for the sense pleasures, which is, again, I'm trying to satisfy my senses. So here the word kama, which is desire, is not just about eating anything, but includes just about anything, drinking, anything which is giving me pleasure. And artha is everything that brings a sense of security for me. What are the things that is bringing sense of security? For example, right now is making sure I have my snow blowers and everything, which is making my house secure, wealth. So power, influence, fame, name, all these things are what is giving me that artha. So as a human being, for us, there is no end to this aspect of artha and kama. I have a lot of desires. I need to fulfill it. If I'm unable to fulfill it, then I do this artha business, which is through all these wealth and everything. I'm so constantly, my life is revolving around just this artha and kama. And when I do that, there is no way that I can actually practice this indriyarteshu vairagyam, right? So to become free of this completely thing that we call raga and everything, I need to find what are all the things that is giving me this pleasure. What are the things that is making me insecure? So if I do that analysis in my mind, only then I will really be able to practice this vairagyam. So vairagyam is not a suppression, but vairagyam is through understanding am I really getting pleasure out of all this? Can I practice this and see, how my mind is reacting? And focusing only on that mind as a reflection tool is one way to get over this. So the pleasure is basically, we kind of call it happiness. We have to recognize that whatever this happiness I'm getting is, I always think of that happiness equation, the three things. The more of the same thing is not going to give me happiness. And what is that? There are the same thing will not give me happiness. The more of the same thing will not give me happiness. More of different things cannot give me happiness. And then more of this on different days cannot give me happiness. The more lasting happiness, I'm saying, they're always subject to change. So when I recognize that, why am I going to this whole thing, So that is where vairagyam is a state of mind, which is brought about by understanding and not suppression, So it's not a state of mind, which is compelled by self-denial or where we are depriving ourselves. So how is this relevant to today's world again, So the point is, if I'm able to have control over all these 5 things, I can really have, each one of this, if I recognize that each one of this sense pleasures, they lead to destruction because of my attachment towards it, it can really give you a great mastery and leadership, because in today's world again, these 5 things hit you from so many different angles. So there are books which are addressed, and in Bhagavad Gita itself, we have in chapter 2, it says, a leader really is a person of discrimination who has great control over all these sense organs. So having said that, let's go through some reflective questions here, So this is again reflection for each one of us, right? So what is the level of vairagyam that we have towards objects? For each one of us, it's different. So, and then think of an object that I desire the most. And this can be anything. Like I said, it could be a material object. And let's think about my relationship. Am I habituated towards it or anything? Is this something that I can give up? Is it possible for you to live if you do not have this? I mean, again, it's not just object, it can be relationship, it can be a situation. I always want my room to be a certain temperature, And does your happiness or well-being really depend on this? Will I get permanent? So then think about, has there ever been, everlasting happiness? So if I go through this kind of a reflective exercise, I'll be able to truly practice this indriyateshu vairagyam. So the final question is, how do I plan to become more objective towards the object of desires? I remember when we were doing the Sandipni course, our Acharya used to make us think, go through everything in your life and see which one is permanent, If I know that something is not permanent, then where is that happiness? And then, so that reflective exercise is needed for us to discuss, talk about this. Any thoughts or comments about the importance of this value in our life,
Actually, the last sentence that you said, that reflection on the desires and the objects that bring happiness, right? You were talking about we should. Now, I mean, this is me just being me, is we have so many desires and we think that all of them are going to bring happiness. So, first of all, we have to figure out what are those desires that are, that are just time pass, that have nothing to do with us, and then actually figure out what it is that will bring us permanent happiness. We have to first distinguish between the desires which are useful ones and which are just hawa mein mahal banana, it's like your brain, that is, we do that with our desires, right? We build a castle in the air and we do that. So we have to figure that out, and then this is a good reflection exercise, definitely, because the mind wanders away. So it is like really not control the mind. It is more like get the mind to actually focus on what the aspect of what it is. What is happiness is, is, I think, we want happiness, but before that there's something that we say is. What is that? Something in between, that we have to first figure that out. There's this vacuum that we would want to fill it up with something or the other. We have to recognize that there is a vacuum there, and that vacuum is nothing but we have to fill it with happiness, which is already inside us. We need to just recognize
Yeah.
that. But we
If
say
you
that,
can, yeah, you're saying an inside out approach,
yeah, it's
First,
like,
I understand who I am. And if I understand who I am, then a lot of these things may not even matter, right?
yeah, I mean, for
Yeah,
me, that is where I am.
right.
Your questions for as you were talking, my mind already went towards, okay, where am I in?
Right,
where am I? What
right.
is it that it's the
Any other
questions
thoughts
are
from
very good.
anybody else? Yeah.
Hariom, in Chinmaya mission, like I hear that desires are like tissue papers.
What
So
is like
like
tissue? A design like
the
tissue paper.
desires,
Yeah,
they are
exactly.
like
This
tissue
is
papers. They
like the
come one
box
after the
of
other.
tissues.
Right.
Yeah, one is over, the other one is waiting. I always compare this to Disneyland, when you go to Florida, I remember this one particular ride. Uh, I I remember going on the ride just after doing this 13th chapter or something. I said, "Wow, this is great." There'll be as soon as there's always a huge line of cars waiting for you to go on it for a ride, right? And with beautiful music and such perfect surroundings, a car will come and you just run to get into it, So it's like running towards fulfilling a desire. Um,
And then it's all over in 2 minutes
in
or
2
less
minutes,
than 2
exactly.
minutes.
No, see, this is beautiful marketing. It's really, I think marketing uses Vedanta where they know that the taste in a tongue lasts only for a few seconds, and how do I bring that back? Or like this, it's a 2 minutes or less than, the ride is for that because there are about 100 rides that you have to go through. If you spend half an hour on one thing, then oh my God, there's no business for the others. So let's make this shorter. Marketing is all about using some of this in the other way and capitalizing on it.
Yes. So if I may take a minute, going back to developing addiction,
Developing
I'm
addiction.
thinking it starts with exposure,
Yeah.
and then I think we all go through either consciously or subconsciously a cost benefit analysis. Once you are exposed to it, you go through that cost benefit analysis, and there is a short term and long term aspect to it. And if you are able to focus on long term, a lot of times you may come up with a better decision, but most of the time we end up focusing on the short term. And that gets you going in the, in the direction. And to come out of it is you have to apply our values, whatever we are talking here. We have to apply values to come out of it. And here, at least for physical thing, there is a almost a chemical / physical aspect to it. It seems
Yes.
like, and to overcome that with values, I'm just struggling how effective that is just by consideration of ideas of dispassion, for example.
Yes.
If you need some I mean, reflection certainly is a very helpful, but sometimes you may need a physical barrier or some either you impose or somebody imposes on you.
Yeah, so that is
To
why
go
I
beyond
think,
that physical aspect of addiction,
yeah,
physical/chemical aspect of addiction.
correct, correct. So, like for example, in our Indian knowledge systems, right, we have this aspect of fasting. Okay. This, to your point, how can I cross a physical thing by something which is happening in the mind? I mean, I'm not able to see a physical outcome right away, correct? And that is why it's very hard to convince the mind what I should be doing. And I think this is probably why in our Indian knowledge traditions, uh, we have this inbuilt fasting on, Amavasya and on these days and so many, and even Monday, Tuesday,
Right,
Wednesday, you have
right
the
there is
fast.
your physical barrier that you're creating.
Yeah, and even though it may not make sense in the beginning, correct? When you're a child and you're told that you have to fast, it doesn't make sense. But we do need that discipline when things don't make sense, when we are not there yet mature enough. Because if we don't have the discipline and I am now mature enough to understand something, unfortunately, this knowledge is too deep to make any sense in the beginning. Therefore, I think we need that physical barriers to be put on ourselves in the beginning as a child. And we need to tell the child, you know what? You just listen to me. That's it. Don't give them explanation. Don't do anything, because many times we may also be at that age where we don't understand it. You know, it's only much later that we also develop a good understanding. So today, for example, I mean, when we did this Ekadasi fast and all that were told to us, we never really bothered to do it. But when somebody says 16-hour intermittent fasting, okay, and we show some data on the reduction in the sugar levels and things like that, we are convinced and we want to do it. But unfortunately, we are so habituated in leading a life. And I'm speaking for personally from my own example, actually, because I have not been able to do the 16-hour fast. Ashok is really good at it. And every time I look at it, I'm jealous. But the point is, I have become so habituated to a certain life that it's impossible for me to bring a 16-hour fast. But if I had started on an Ekadasi fast when I was very young, that would have held me in good stead and I would not have developed a habit. So that's where I'm coming with how these traditions which are there in the India thing really make sense. And we never took to it because we thought we were super smart and we thought, it doesn't make sense. Again, I'm speaking about myself, I said, I never believed in all this and I never did that. But ah, now it's very hard to get to it because you're too old and the habits kill you. Other habits kill you.
But even the kids, Sunita, like
Uh-huh.
if they know that they are allergic to something, they don't even go and touch it.
I
How
know.
can
I
they
know. That
control?
is
I mean,
correct.
we are
So,
like old enough not to eat, like as you said, Ekadashi, only sabudana kind of a thing.
right.
So even though we have so many other items, we shouldn't be eating. So we are controlling. Same with the kid, I'm amazed, like, little ones, they say that I'm allergic to that. I can't eat it.
Yeah,
They
that's
won't
because,
even
see, that
go.
is,
Yeah.
I know, but that is because the physical thing is doing it. Now,
Yeah.
can we do the same thing without having the allergies?
Right.
That's where the
That's
mind,
understanding one. Yeah.
yeah,
No, but
yeah,
there you have the instant cost understanding, right? Instant cost of doing it.
They suffer.
If
Yeah.
you
Mhm.
eat
I
it,
know,
you know
but
right away there is a cost to it.
Uh-huh.
right,
Right. Right.
right,
That relationship is very clear in that case.
yeah. But again, we can't, the cost thing is at the gross level,
Yeah.
right?
As we
So
Right.
we
grow,
have,
we know the
Cost
goal.
not in terms of money, but in terms of your health.
yeah, but that is also gross at the gross body level. Yeah. Okay, so I think we'll
Yeah.
stop here. I was hoping to do Anahankaraha, but I think we will do that next week. Okay. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet. Om shanti shanti shanti. Om purnamadav purnamidam purnat purnamudachyate purnasya purnamadaya purnameva vashishyate. Om shanti shanti shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Thank you. Hari Om.
Thank you,
We'll see you
Sunitha
next
ji.
week.
Thank you.
Hari Om. Thank you,
Om.
Sunitha ji.
Hari Om.